Does God remember the prayers your grandmother prayed for you? Have you ever wondered if the prayers someone once whispered for you still linger in the heart of God? Maybe your grandmother, years ago, sat on the edge of her bed at night, whispering your name into the quiet. Maybe you were just a child then, or maybe you weren't even born yet. She prayed for your safety, for your salvation, for your future, that somehow you would find your way to Jesus. And now, years later, you're sitting here, living life, maybe far from the faith she held so tightly, maybe still searching for meaning, and suddenly that question rises inside you like a whisper carried by time. Does God remember the prayers my grandmother prayed for me? It's a question that touches something deep, something sacred, because we've all seen the power of a praying grandmother. We've seen those hands, old, wrinkled, yet powerful, folded in faith. We've heard those voices cracked by age, yet strong in spirit. They prayed when everyone else gave up. They believed when no one else did. And somehow, even now, those prayers feel alive. There's something about a grandmother's prayer that doesn't fade. Maybe it's because it was prayed with tears. Maybe it's because it came from a heart that had been through storms and found Jesus faithful. Or maybe it's because God never forgets a single prayer uttered in faith. The Bible says He keeps them. Every word, every sigh, every groan too deep for language. And if God is the same yesterday, today, and forever, then what your grandmother prayed decades ago might still be unfolding in your life today. You see, we live in a world that forgets quickly. We forget birthdays, promises, names, faces, but God doesn't forget. His memory is eternal. What you and I think is lost in the past is still alive in His presence. Time does not bury prayers, it preserves them. So when you feel something tugging at your heart, when life starts turning in a direction you didn't expect, maybe it's not just coincidence. Maybe it's the ripple of a prayer prayed long before you ever knew what prayer was. The question is not whether God remembers, it's whether we do. Do we remember where we came from? Do we remember that faith was planted in us before we even had words to speak? Somewhere, someone bent their knees for you. Someone believed for you when you couldn't believe for yourself. That's where this story begins. Not with you, but with the faith of someone who loved you enough to pray. And maybe that's why you're here today, not by chance, not by accident, but because heaven never forgets a prayer whispered by a faithful heart. If you close your eyes for a moment, you can almost see her. A small room, a flickering lamp, a Bible lying open on the table, pages worn thin from years of use. There's your grandmother, rocking slowly in her chair, her lips moving in silent prayer. Her words are simple, but her faith is unshakable. She doesn't have much, but she knows the one who has everything. She prays for each of her children by name. Then she prays for you. She may not know what you'll face, who you'll become, or how the world will change, but she prays as if heaven is listening, because she believes it is. There's something sacred about a grandmother's prayer. It's not loud or showy. It doesn't seek attention. It's patient, steady, and full of love. It's the kind of prayer that rises quietly in the night when the world is sleeping, but heaven is awake. And while you were dreaming, she was interceding. While you were wandering, she was standing in the gap. Her prayers were like invisible threads, weaving protection around you, calling you back when you strayed too far, lighting your path when the darkness grew thick. Maybe you remember the sound of her voice. Maybe you can still hear her calling your name in prayer, or maybe you never met her, but her legacy still lingers. That's the mystery of prayer. It travels farther than time, reaching places you'll never see. Your grandmother's prayers were not just for her lifetime, they were for your lifetime. Every tear she shed in faith became a seed, planted deep in the soil of God's promise, and God never forgets what is planted in faith. When a grandmother prays, she's not just talking to God, she's building a foundation for generations. Think about it. Every time she prayed, she was building something eternal. She was covering her family in words that would outlive her. Her knees may have grown weak, but her faith was stronger than ever. She knew that even if she never saw the answer with her eyes, God would not let her prayers fall to the ground. Maybe you felt it, that quiet conviction that pulls you towards something greater, that moment when you should have fallen apart, but somehow you didn't. That's what a grandmother's prayer does. It holds you when you can't hold yourself. It covers you in moments you don't even realize you're being protected. It's the unseen armor you didn't know you were wearing. So when you think about your grandmother, remember, her faith didn't die when she did. Her prayers didn't end when she left this world. They're still alive, still echoing before the throne of God, still shaping your story in ways you can't yet see. Because the faith of one praying grandmother can move through generations, carrying the promise of God from her knees to your heart. God's memory is not like ours. We forget what we prayed last week. We forget promises we made. We forget faces and names and moments that once felt unforgettable. But the God who created time is not bound by it. To him, every prayer ever spoken in faith still exists, still breathes, still carries weight. The Bible says in Revelation 5:8 that the prayers of the saints rise before his throne like incense in golden bowls. That means every prayer your grandmother ever prayed is still before him, not lost, not discarded, but living in his presence. We often think prayers expire when life moves on. We think if we didn't see the answer, maybe God forgot. But in heaven, no prayer of faith is ever wasted. It's stored, it's remembered, it's alive. Your grandmother's prayers didn't vanish into thin air. They became a fragrance that still fills heaven's atmosphere. Maybe she prayed for your salvation, for your peace, for your future, for your marriage, for your calling. And maybe it hasn't all come to pass yet. But God is not done. What she started in prayer, he will finish in power. Think about this. When God remembers, it's not like human memory. His remembrance is action. When Scripture says God remembered Noah, it means God moved. When he remembered Hannah, she conceived. When he remembered his covenant with Abraham, he delivered Israel. So when God remembers the prayers your grandmother prayed, he doesn't just think fondly of them. He responds, he moves, he acts in his time. Your grandmother may have left this earth, but her prayers didn't. They're still part of heaven's agenda. You might be walking through doors she prayed would open. You might be protected by angels she asked God to send. You might be living in blessings that were unlocked by words she whispered decades ago. The power of prayer isn't confined to the moment it's spoken. It's eternal because the one who hears it is eternal. Sometimes we underestimate the memory of God, but he's the same God who said he counts every hair on your head, catches every tear you cry, and writes your name on the palms of his hands. If he keeps track of that, how much more does he remember the prayer spoken over you in love and faith? Heaven doesn't have a delete button. Once a prayer reaches God, it's written in eternity's story. And somewhere right now, your name might still be echoing in the halls of heaven because God remembers. There's a truth we rarely think about. Prayer can outlive the one who prayed it. Time can't kill what was spoken in faith. Death can't silence what was offered in trust. When a believer prays, their words step into eternity, and eternity doesn't end. That's why the prayers of your grandmother are still alive, still active, still powerful. They didn't die with her. They live because God lives. The Bible is full of stories of prayers that stretched beyond lifetimes. Abraham prayed for generations he'd never see, and those generations became Israel. David prayed that his descendants would walk with God, and generations later Jesus was born from his line. Timothy grew up in the faith because of his grandmother Lois and his mother Eunice, women who prayed and passed down belief like a holy inheritance. None of them lived to see the full picture of what God did with their prayers, but heaven did not forget. That's the beauty of faith. It doesn't always need to see results to believe they're coming. Your grandmother might have prayed when everything looked hopeless, when the family was falling apart, when faith seemed lost. She might have prayed through tears, asking God to reach hearts that seemed too far gone. And now, years later, something in your life shifts, something in your heart softens, and you wonder why. Maybe it's because her prayers finally met their moment. You see, prayer isn't bound by time, it travels through it. When your grandmother spoke your name before God, she set something in motion. Heaven heard it then, but God may be answering it now. You're living proof that time doesn't cancel prayer, it delivers it in perfect timing. What was prayed in 1965 can still bear fruit in 2025, because the God who holds the beginning and the end knows exactly when to make a seed bloom. Think of those prayers as spiritual investments. Your grandmother sowed them with tears, and you're harvesting them with grace. Maybe you're not even aware of how much you've been carried by those words, but the peace that found you when you should have fallen apart, the protection that surrounded you when danger came close, the chance that appeared when you thought the door was closed, all of that could be the evidence of prayers still unfolding from another lifetime. And maybe, just maybe, your life today is the continuation of her story. Her faith didn't end when she took her last breath. It simply changed form. Her prayers became part of your destiny. Her hope became your heritage. Her faith became your foundation. And every time you turn your heart toward God, every time you whisper your own prayer, you're not starting something new. You're continuing something ancient, something sacred, something that began long before you and will continue long after you're gone. Because when faith speaks, time listens. And when a grandmother prays, heaven remembers forever. There are moments in life when you look back and realize you've been rescued more times than you can count. Times when the accident didn't happen, when the door you wanted to open stayed closed, when the relationship ended before it broke you completely. Maybe you didn't see it then, but now you know something, or rather someone, was watching over you. And maybe that protection, that grace that keeps showing up, even when you least deserve it, is connected to the prayers your grandmother prayed long ago. Grace has a way of finding us even when we've done everything to avoid it. It doesn't always come with thunder or light. Sometimes it comes quietly, through an old prayer still alive in God's presence. Your grandmother may have prayed, "Lord, no matter where they go, don't let them go so far that they can't find their way back to you." And even when you wandered, even when you rebelled, that prayer stood like a wall between you and destruction. That's what intercession does. It builds spiritual barriers that darkness can't cross. Maybe you felt that pull in your heart, that ache that tells you there's more to life than what you're chasing. That's grace, and grace often begins in someone else's prayer. It's not about deserving it. It's about God being faithful to the faith of another. You see, grace doesn't run on fairness, it runs on promise. And if your grandmother prayed that you'd be saved, that you'd know Jesus, that you'd find peace, then God took her at her word. Think about how many times you were protected and didn't even know it. That night you should have been somewhere else. That decision that could have ruined everything. That path that could have led you far from who you are. You thought it was luck, coincidence, or instinct. But maybe it was grace intercepting your downfall because of someone's old prayer still echoing in heaven. That's the beautiful thing about God. He answers prayers not just based on who we are, but because of who He is, and because of who prayed for us. You may have given up on yourself, but God didn't, because your grandmother didn't. Her faith kept your name before His throne, and even now, when you feel unworthy, when guilt whispers that you've gone too far, grace still calls your name. You're not standing here today by accident. You're here because mercy remembered, because somewhere, long ago, someone loved you enough to place your life in God's hands, and He never let go. But what about the prayers that seem to go unanswered? The ones your grandmother prayed with tears that never seemed to bear fruit? Maybe she prayed for someone who never turned to God, for healing that never came, for reconciliation that never happened. Maybe she left this world still waiting, still believing. Does that mean God forgot? No, it means the story isn't finished yet. Unanswered prayers are not forgotten prayers. Sometimes they're just prayers in waiting. God's timing is not ours, and His answers rarely fit our expectations. When a grandmother prays, she plants seeds. Some sprout quickly, others take generations. The soil may seem dry, the ground hard, but deep beneath the surface something is growing. And when the season is right, those buried prayers break through. The Bible is filled with people who prayed and didn't see the full answer in their lifetime. Abraham didn't live to see all his descendants. Moses didn't enter the promised land, yet their prayers shaped history. Faith is not about seeing the result. It's about trusting the one who holds the result. Your grandmother might not have seen everything she prayed for, but that doesn't mean her prayers failed. It means they're still unfolding in God's perfect design. We often think silence means no, but sometimes silence means later. God may have held her prayer in His hand, waiting for the right generation, the right heart, the right moment to bring it to life. You could be the fulfillment of that unanswered prayer. You could be the living proof that God's delays are not denials. And even when the answer doesn't look like what we expected, God's wisdom always surpasses our understanding. Maybe she prayed for healing, and God gave her heaven instead. Maybe she prayed for peace in the family, and that peace is being written through you. Maybe she prayed for someone else's salvation, and now you're the one carrying that torch, becoming the answer to the prayer she left behind. No prayer is wasted. Not one word slips through the cracks of eternity. God gathers every syllable, every sigh, every tear, and holds them in his memory until their purpose is complete. What looks unfinished to us may already be perfected in heaven's timeline. So when you think about those unanswered prayers, don't see them as forgotten. See them as seeds still waiting for the sun. They may not have bloomed in her lifetime, but they're destined to bloom in yours. Because God is faithful, not just to the one who prays, but to the generations who follow. Heaven forgets nothing that is spoken in faith. Every whispered prayer, every tear that falls in the dark, every word that seems too small to matter, it all rises before the throne of God and stays there. Psalm 56 verse 8 says, God collects our tears in a bottle and records them in his book. That means nothing is wasted, not even the quietest plea your grandmother ever made for you. Her prayers may have sounded ordinary to human ears, but to heaven they were eternal. Imagine that. Every time she called your name, heaven took note. Every time she said, Lord, keep them safe or bring them home, those words were written down in God's memory. You see, God doesn't just hear prayers, he keeps them. The cries of his people don't fade with time, they remain alive in his presence, waiting for the moment when he chooses to act. There's a place in heaven where prayers gather like incense. The angels hold them in golden bowls, as Revelation says, and they rise like fragrance before God. That means the atmosphere of heaven is filled with the prayers of the faithful, including the ones your grandmother prayed decades ago. Those prayers are still there, unspoiled, unforgotten, and powerful. Think about the way she prayed. Maybe her voice trembled, maybe her knees hurt, maybe her body grew weak, but her spirit burned with faith. Heaven never overlooks that kind of faith. When she whispered your name, it wasn't just sound, it was seed. And every seed of prayer carries potential that only God can unlock. Sometimes we think heaven is distant, like God has too much to remember, too many prayers to hear. But the Bible tells us he is a father who notices sparrows fall and lilies grow. If he remembers the smallest detail of his creation, he surely remembers every prayer prayed for the people he loves. Every whisper counts, every tear is testimony. So maybe right now, when you feel peace in a storm, or hope rising from nowhere, that's not random. It's a response to a prayer that never left heaven's throne. The same God who remembered Hannah's cry for a child and heard Elijah's prayer for rain is the same God who remembers your grandmother's voice. Her whisper is still alive in eternity's chambers, and you are walking in the echo of it. Faith doesn't stop with one person. It ripples through generations. What your grandmother believed, what she prayed, what she sowed into the atmosphere of her home, it didn't end when she left this world. It's still flowing through your family line, shaping hearts, influencing choices, and carrying unseen blessings into places our hands never touched. That's the power of generational faith. The Apostle Paul wrote to Timothy saying, I am reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice, and I am persuaded now lives in you also. Faith is transferable, not genetically, but spiritually. It's like a flame passed from one candle to another, and the light never goes out. Your grandmother's faith might have been the beginning of a legacy you didn't even realize you were part of. Maybe you've seen it in small ways. The peace that fills your home when you pray, the strength you find when you worship, the grace that helps you forgive when you shouldn't be able to. Those qualities might be the residue of prayers prayed long before you ever knew God. Faith runs deep, and when it's lived out through generations, it creates spiritual momentum. Your grandmother's prayers didn't just cover you, they called you higher. They set boundaries in the spirit, creating a path for you to walk. She might have prayed, Lord, let my children's children serve you. And those words have become like invisible hands, guiding you back every time you drift too far. The choices you make today, the blessings you experience, even the hunger you feel for something more, these are all part of the ripple she started. But it doesn't end with you. The same faith that shaped her and now shapes you is meant to continue. The prayers she prayed are still producing fruit, but now it's your turn to plant. You can be the one who prays for your children, your grandchildren, for generations you'll never meet. You can keep the flame alive. This is how faith multiplies. It moves through time, linking the past, present, and future in one divine story. Your grandmother prayed for you because someone prayed for her, and now you have the same invitation to be a bridge between what was and what will be. So don't underestimate the quiet faith that flows through your family. Don't overlook the ways God has already been faithful. You are part of something much bigger than yourself, a legacy of prayer, faith, and grace that stretches across generations. And somewhere in heaven, if your grandmother could see it, she'd smile, because the faith she planted didn't die. It's alive in you. There's a moment when you realize that you're not just living your own story, you're walking in someone else's answered prayer. Maybe your grandmother never got to see you become who you are today. Maybe she didn't witness your turning point, the day you found peace, the day you forgave, the day you surrendered to God. But heaven saw it, and when it happened, it was as if her prayer was fulfilled, her voice finally meeting its answer in your life. You're not just a name on God's list. You are the evidence of His faithfulness to someone else's faith. The fact that you're still standing, still breathing, still seeking truth is proof that God honors the prayers of His people. Every time you choose forgiveness over bitterness, love over anger, faith over fear, you're answering a prayer your grandmother once prayed. You're living proof that her faith was not in vain. Think about that for a moment. The choices you make today can complete the prayer she started. Maybe she prayed that you'd walk closely with Jesus, that you'd be a person of compassion, that your family would find peace. When you love others, when you seek God, when you raise your children to know His name, you're fulfilling that legacy. You're what she hoped for, even if she never saw it with her eyes. There's a sacred beauty in becoming the answer to someone else's prayer. It's like time folding in on itself, connecting generations through faith. What she sowed, you're now reaping. And what you sow in prayer today, others will one day harvest. The cycle of faith never ends, it only multiplies. Sometimes the best way to honor the prayers of the past is to live in a way that proves them true. If your grandmother prayed that you would walk in joy, don't let bitterness steal it. If she prayed that you would find your purpose, keep seeking until you do. If she prayed that your family would stay close to God, be the one who keeps that flame burning. You may never hear her voice again, but her words still live inside you. Every act of faith, every prayer you whisper, every moment you trust God when it's hard, you're not just living for yourself. You're continuing the story she began. You are her legacy, her answered prayer, her reminder that faith never dies when it's planted in God's hands. So now the question comes to you, what will you do with this legacy? The prayers of your grandmother were not meant to stop with you. They were meant to continue through you. You are part of a living chain of faith that stretches from generation to generation, and it's your turn to add your voice to it. Take a moment and remember her. Remember the way she prayed, the way she believed, the way she trusted God even when life was hard. Remember the peace she carried, the love she gave, the strength she found in Jesus. That same strength is available to you. That same faith still works, and that same God who remembered her prayers will remember yours too. Now it's time to pray forward. It's time to sow prayers for the generations that will come after you, your children, your grandchildren, those yet unborn. Pray that they will walk in light. Pray that they will know Jesus deeply. Pray that even when they wander, His hand will guide them home. Just as someone once prayed for you, you now have the power to shape the future through your words. This is how heaven's story continues. One generation prays, the next receives, and then prays again. The faith that once carried you can now carry others. The same God who remembered her prayers will remember yours, because His faithfulness does not end with one lifetime. One day, years from now, someone might ask the same question. Does God remember the prayers my grandmother prayed for me? And they'll see the answer in their own life, the way grace met them in impossible moments, the way peace came when everything else fell apart, the way love found them when they least deserved it. and they'll know the truth. Yes, He remembers. Because God never forgets a prayer spoken in faith. He never loses track of a word whispered in love, and the prayers your grandmother prayed are still alive in His heart, still shaping your story. Now it's your turn to pray those same kinds of prayers, to speak words that will outlive you, to build an altar of faith for those who will come after you. So lift your eyes to heaven, thank God for the prayers that carried you here, and then begin to pray for your family, for your future, for the next generation. Because long after you're gone, your prayers will still be echoing in the halls of eternity, just like hers. Heaven remembers, always.